Hey, Indian Creek 8th grade students, welcome to our daily e-learning lesson here. It is Tuesday, April 28th, and let's just jump right into our daily updates. So yesterday we had 41 out of 51 students who submitted the attendance form yesterday. There were a lot of really good, really funny and interesting responses to the question. I hope that it was one that people enjoyed. Like I said, just trying to mix up the different types of journal kind of response questions. We can keep with this, or like I said, please feel free to email me if you have an idea for a type of question or a series of questions you think it'd be fun to ask, because we do still have basically 4 weeks of e-learning left, and I'm always looking to kind of mix things up. But 41 out of 51, we'll talk about some of those in a minute here. And then we had 10 people who had gone through and completed the intro sheet for Vocab Unit 11, which is optional. And I will be going over that in today's stream as well, because I know some of you filled the whole sheet out, but it's the same requirement as though we were in class together with the definition, one example, one connection. I know some people did all three, but if you didn't, you'll get your other examples from me today, for those of you who are watching this. And then, so our class plan for today, we'll talk about our Google form. We'll be reviewing Animal Farm Chapter 7, lots of stuff happening. Some of you might have noticed that there were some areas that I highlighted in the story. There's a reason for that. It was just to the point where there were so many things that I wanted to include in terms of important quotes. Some of them a little bit longer. They wouldn't fit on my slides. And so we're actually just going to go into the story itself, talk about some of those highlighted areas, because there was just so much that happened in Chapter 7 that is important. And we'll be talking about the couple characters that I want you to fill in for your allegory chart for your assignment for today. And then there is an optional Chapter 7 response that was posted in Google Classroom. And then today is your final day to be working on your civil rights activist biography assignment for social studies. So we'll just briefly, final day reminders, touch on that, and then that'll be it. So let's look at some of the highlights from yesterday's journal prompt. We had 2 options. I know some people did both options. Like I said, you only needed to do one. I didn't want to make both required, just because, like I said, they were both meant to be an option for the journal response. But I did see a number of people who did both. I mean, I appreciate it. I hope you had fun with it. And so these are just some of the highlights. So the first option was you were casting a movie and you needed to come up with an action star, his or her sidekick, and then a villain. So one person, and I'll be honest, I knew exactly who this was. Well, I shouldn't say knew. I had a feeling I knew who this was when I read it, and I was right. Went with the Office crew, so said Steve Carell would be the star, Rainn Wilson the sidekick, and then John Krasinski the villain. It's almost like we're watching Threat Level Midnight with Michael Scarn and Samuel L. Chang and Golden Face. Then we had Chase Stokes, Daniel Ezra, and then Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson playing a villain, which I thought was kind of interesting, because you'll see 2 down from that. We had another student who said that they would like Dwayne Johnson to be the star, with Cole Sprouse as his sidekick, and then Leonardo DiCaprio as a villain. We also had one who went with Ryan Reynolds as the star, with Michael B. Jordan as his sidekick, and then Jim Carrey as the villain. And then finally another student who said Chris Evans as the star, Kevin Hart as the sidekick, and then Tom Hiddleston as the villain. So just kind of a range. John Krasinski, Dwayne Johnson, Leo, they're all actors. I feel like you might put more in the star category, but they also have had times playing villains as well. And then our other option that we had was a romantic comedy, or just a comedy in general. So a lead actor, a best friend or a love interest, and then an antagonist. And so we had one person wanted to go with Adam Sandler, and then Jack Black as his BFF, and then Chevy Chase as the antagonist. I think that'd be really funny. just like the next one, which was again Adam Sandler in the lead, his best friend Kevin James, and their antagonist Jim Carrey. Lots of good comedic acting in those trios. Then we had another one, Noah Centineo, with Tom Holland as his best friend, and then Selena Gomez as the love interest. And then another one, Anne Hathaway actually is the lead. Justin I think it's Belladny. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure how to say that. But then Jamie Lee Curtis, I thought this was interesting because that student mentioned that would be like the mother-in-law or quote-unquote monster-in-law situation, which would be interesting. And then finally another one with Morgan Freeman and Jim Carrey as best friends, and then Samuel L. Jackson is the antagonist. I just kind of thought that was funny because Samuel L. Jackson kind of gets the rep. He's in everything, plays all different kinds of roles, and definitely can play a good antagonist. So those were some of the journal highlights from yesterday, and we can use those to transition right into today. Here's a Google form. I mentioned we're going to be talking about Chapter 7 today. Fill in your allegory chart for the dogs and for Squealer are your two assignments. We'll talk more about those in a minute. Going over our Unit 11 vocab sheet today. And then your attendance responses, again, it's 2 options. Give your list of people that you want to fill them out, and then you can explain why if you would like as well. So again, you're picking groups of 3 celebrities. Celebrity doesn't need to necessarily be just someone who's in movies and TV shows. You can go with musicians, athletes, whoever you want. So the first option, you're organizing a group hang. You're picking 3 people to be your quote-unquote squad, your friend circle, whatever you want to call it. Just a reminder, remember that this is your group, so everybody should be able to get along with everybody else. So that might be something you need to take into account while you're coming up with your people. Or maybe you're the type of person who likes to see some chaos, and you might pick 2 people that are going to have some disagreements, but that's totally up to you. And then option 2, and again, you don't need to do both of them, but option 2, now your mission is to get some laughs. So say that you or a friend is just down in the dumps and you need 3 people to bring some cheer, some laughter into your situation. Who are you going with? So I mentioned some of those lineups, the movie lineups from yesterday. A lot of good comedic value in some of those. You could go with very similar groupings if you want to just pick 3 very funny people, or you could again take into account groups of people who just seem to be very funny together. I can think of, for example, I know like Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg together are hilarious, even though some people might not think of Mark Wahlberg as a truly comedic actor because he's just got a little bit more of a range. But him and Will Ferrell together, very, very funny. So again, one option, you don't have to do both, but you can do both if you would like to. All right, so that's it for the Google Forms. So why don't we just transition over into talking about Animal Farm. And we are all the way up to Chapter 7. We're getting pretty close to the end of the book. Should be ending the book next week. That not counting those of you who I know have read ahead and have already finished and we're looking for some other things to do. But so Chapter 7, we are looking at an event, and that's why I went with this title, The Great Purge. Hopefully you remember from talking about social studies and Stalin's time in power, one of the biggest atrocities that he orchestrated, the Great Purge. We see an event that stands in for this in this chapter in Animal Farm. I could have done, Life Goes Downhill or Snowball Continues to Play the Scapegoat, all different types of titles that could have been used, but I felt like this was the most shocking event that happened, so that's why I went with that title. So let's jump into our summary. The animals struggle to rebuild the windmill and begin to fall short of food. The winter's hard, life is getting more challenging, but Boxer continues to be an inspiration for the other animals in rebuilding the windmill and really just in general. Napoleon begins to sell off eggs for feed and for other materials, and the hens do not like this, so they actually go on strike. In response to this, Napoleon cuts off their food entirely, and the hens are eventually forced to give in. Although there are 9 who die during this strike. So these are really kind of the first animal deaths that we see under control of Napoleon and the pigs. The animals are soon told that Snowball has been sabotaging the farm at night, and it is soon revealed that he has sold himself to Mr. Frederick and was actually in league with Jones the whole time, at least according to Squealer. That was one of the things I told you to look out for, the role that Snowball continues to play. We don't actually see him, hear him speak, but his name continues to be dragged through the mud and blamed for a lot of things on Animal Farm during this chapter. Squealer recalls the Battle of the Cowshed and claims that Snowball was actually trying to hurt the animals. Boxer claims he does not remember this, but eventually Squealer convinces him. And Squealer is very clearly displeased that Boxer calls him out, but his way of describing things are so vivid, so believable. I hate to say it, but the other animals are just so gullible and unintelligent. Eventually they accept what he tells them and believe that because Napoleon and Squealer are telling them that Snowball was bad, Snowball was actually bad. So then one day, Napoleon gathers the farm in the yard and leads the dogs through a purge where a number of animals are slaughtered after confessing to their quote-unquote crimes. This time also sees the dogs turn on Boxer, who fights them off but is clearly now a target. The animals are shaken after watching several comrades die, and Boxer clearly believes that this must be their own fault and commits to work harder than ever. Clover looks out over the farm sadly, but cannot put her thoughts into words. Finally, after the animals engage in a new, much slower, kind of sadder rendition of Beasts of England, Squealer comes around to tell them that the song has been banned. When the animals ask why, he claims it is because the song is one of rebellion and that the day's purge saw an end to any need for rebellion. So lots of different things going on here, and I think the best thing to do for right now, really quickly, actually, we can just show the barn update. We still have Commandment 4 has been changed. No other changes as of yet. As a spoiler, there is a change very quickly into Chapter 8 because I'm sure some of you, in looking at this and thinking about what we just talked about, can see that Commandment 6, no animal shall kill any other animal. And we just talked about how Napoleon led the dogs in the slaughter of several of the other animals on the farm. So be on the lookout for that because that is another change that will be coming and happens pretty quickly into Chapter 8. All right. So now instead of doing important quotes on the slides, as I mentioned at the top of this video, there were just so many important sections that I thought that are kind of longer. I just wanted to jump over into the story, and we're going to go over them with those on the screen. So I'll give you a minute here. I want to zoom in a little bit just for people on the video if you're reading along, just to be able to see it. Although now I realize, oh, there we go. That was quicker than I thought. So if you want to open up the story just to be able to follow along here, there were several areas that I highlighted that would have been the important quotes that I would have included on the slides. So the first one here, and I'm not going to go through and read them. I'll leave them highlighted in the story just because I don't want this to be like a 40-minute video. And I also, like I said, I'm going to leave them highlighted. You can follow along, and I'm just going to kind of give you the main message behind it and why it is so important. So this first section here is talking about how, food is getting short and it's being spread by mankind, that animals are dying, that life is bad, that there's infighting. And, since the food is low, Napoleon knows that he needs to fool people and fool the animals into believing that life on the farm is much better than it actually was. So what he does is he he takes the bins of food, fills them almost to the top with sand, and then just covers the very top layer with the small amounts of grain and other foods that they have. And he makes sure that some of the sheep are being heard or overheard by Mr. Whymper is talking about how great life is, how much food they have. And so after hearing the sheep say this, and after walking through the storage area and seeing the quote-unquote full bins, Whymper is spreading the word to humanity that no, life's not so bad on Animal Farm, and the animals are fine, and they have plenty of food, and life is good. So just a way that Napoleon is using his cunning and presenting life on Animal Farm is much different than it actually is, but one that works out. And so we'll scroll down here to our next section. We are on, I should say, page 26. And this next section here is the hens going on strike because they knew that there was a chance they were going to be asked to sell some of their eggs, and they are worried that they're not going to be able to keep their numbers up, and they see this as an infringement on their rights and that it's not fair that they're having their eggs taken away. So they basically go on strike, and instead of laying their eggs in their nest where they're at, they fly up to the rafters of the barn and then lay their eggs, which means that they fall and smash on the floor. And so Napoleon is not having any of this, so he cuts off the hens' rations and tells the other animals, if you feed any of the hens, you're going to be put to death. And so the hens give in pretty quickly, but during this strike, there are 9 hens who die. And like I said, this is the first time that we see animals die since Napoleon and the pigs have taken over. So an important moment, because it's the first kind of strike, the first kind of pushback against Napoleon and the pigs that we see. We see how ruthless they can be, and also seeing some animals actually perish. All right, and then as we scroll down here, we are on to page 27. And this next section, and like I said, you can probably imagine why I would have had a hard time fitting this onto a slide. But this next section here is basically Squealer's explanation of Snowball's horrible actions and the fact that he, according to Squealer, was actually in with humans and with Mr. Jones from the start. And so he mentions that Snowball went out to get the animals defeated at the Battle of the Cowshed, and the animals are shocked at this because they don't remember it. They remember Snowball being a hero. And it's actually Boxer who calls Squealer out and says, well, I don't believe that. I thought that he was brave. I thought that we gave him a medal. We gave him Animal Hero First Class. And he got wounded. He was bleeding. And Squealer says, no, this was all a plan. It was a mistake. We never should have given him a medal. And Jones only grazed him with his rifle because that was their plan. So it looked like Snowball was on the animal side when really he was actually trying to destroy them because he was in with Mr. Jones. And then obviously, Squealer reminds them that Napoleon was a hero, and if it wasn't for him, they would have lost the Battle of the Cowshed. And at the end of the day, Boxer and the other animals are convinced that what they remember is wrong, that Napoleon was actually the leader, that Snowball was bad. Another example of, this is really the most blatant example, I should say, of Squealer using his words to his advantage, using the fact that the other animals are not very smart to his advantage, and just blatantly lying in a way that makes Napoleon and the pigs look good, makes Snowball look bad, and takes advantage of the other animals. And so you can tell that Squealer is not happy with the fact that Boxer called him out. And you can tell that, unfortunately, this is a moment where the animals have that idea that they could speak out, that they could doubt what they're being told. But then at the end of the day, they just follow along with what Squealer tells them. And so if you go back and read through the Battle of the Cowshed, obviously you see Snowball being the leader. This isn't true. You don't hear anything really about Napoleon, just to reinforce how big of a lie this is. All right, and then we have two more. So this next section here, which is the bottom of page 28, there are pigs who are brought out in front of the farm and who admit to working with Snowball to destroy the windmill, that they were going to try and sell Animal Farm to Mr. Frederick. Just this very random confession to where these pigs basically claim that they are traitors and Napoleon has his dogs kill them, tear their throats out. And then Napoleon commands if there are any other animals who want to confess. And so some of the hens who had been the leaders in the rebellion admit that they had tried to sabotage the farm. There was a goose who admitted to stealing some food. There was a sheep who had, some sheep who had committed to murdering an old ram, or who, a number of other kind of random animals who admit to these crimes, and they're all just slaughtered. And there's just this shock, because at the end there's this pile of bodies and all of the animals just, this is the first time that they see exactly how horrible and how terrifying the dogs can truly be. Obviously, there's the message that Napoleon will not hold back, and it's up to you as a reader to decide why you think this happened. Why would any of these animals admit to these crimes that I think it's pretty clear that none of them actually committed, or even if they did commit, they're not worthy of death. And so, it could be threat by the pigs. It could be that they were brainwashed. It could be that they were told one thing would happen and then obviously they were killed. That's not really established by the story. That's up to you to decide why you think these animals admitted to these crimes. But, at the end of the day, this section is important because it's a major outbreak of violence, this purge of these animals who are quote unquote criminals. And so for a reader just to see how horrible Napoleon and the pigs can be and how dangerous these dogs are. All right, and so then we have this, towards the end here, this very heartbreaking section of the animals in Clover looking out over the lands of Animal Farm. And it's this really beautifully written contrast between the description of how great the farm looks. It's this clear evening, the grass, the lands, they're all beautiful. And yet all the animals are stuck with and haunted by what they've just seen. And so they're having this moment where, on one hand, the farm looks beautiful, it's their own, and they, this is exactly what they would have dreamed for. And on the other hand, this is exactly what they would never have dreamed for, because they just had to watch their comrades, their friends, get killed. And so it's just this kind of moment of they're torn between, on one hand, they see such beauty in the farm, and on the other hand, they're living with these awful images that they just had to see. And at the very end, it's just very sad, because, at the end of the day, it's said that, she, in her mind, in Clover's mind, she claims that at the end of the day, she knows things are better off than they had been in Jones's days, and that they need to continue working to prevent humans from coming back. But if you think about it objectively, are things better? I mean, I would say no, and I think most people at this point would say no. They just had to watch their friends get slaughtered. And then the very last line is just very sad, because it says, "Such were her thoughts, though she lacked the words to express them." So it's like she can have these very complex thoughts and these emotions that are fighting back and forth within her, but at the end of the day, she can't express how she feels just because she doesn't have that ability. And so just kind of reinforcing how the pigs are in control, they can take advantage of her and the other animals, and there's really very little that they can do about it, because the animals can sense that what they see is wrong, but they can't come to grips with the idea that the pigs and that their own comrades would actually be worse potentially than human beings. And so this last little section is just what I had kind of mentioned before, where they sing this kind of very sad, haunting rendition of Beasts of England. And Squealer and a couple dogs come around and say that Beasts of England has been banned. And when the animals who are shocked say why, he says, well, Beasts of England was a rebellion song. We just executed all these traitors, so there's no need for a rebellion song anymore. And it's just sad because Beasts of England had kind of been like their rallying cry, their fight song, their battle song, whatever you want to call it, the song of revolution. And now it too has been banned, has been taken away from them. And I think, thinking objectively, obviously it's Napoleon doesn't want the animals rebelling against him. That's why he would ban it. Not because the rebellion is quote unquote over, but because he doesn't want to see a second rebellion. So those are the important quotes for chapter 7. And so we'll jump back here. And for your allegory chart for today, your assignment for language arts, the 2 characters that I would like for you to fill out the boxes for your allegory chart are the dogs and Squealer. So we will have that tomorrow. But the dogs and Squealer for your allegory chart, those are the 2 characters that I would like for you to fill out today. All right. And then briefly, actually, no, you know what? I would just, I'm going to jump over to social studies here. Just a reminder that your slides for your civil rights activists, today is your final work day. Again, you can use the time if you're done to add more information or to clean up the slides that you have already. If you want to try and undertake doing a second activist on your own, you can. If you undertake it and say, I could really use an extra day tomorrow, or just, don't count it as late. Obviously, we're not counting anything as late, and would be very happy to see you putting in the extra work if you want to. All right. But today for social studies, last day to be working on the civil rights activist slides. And then we'll be moving on to a new assignment tomorrow. All right. So please just don't forget picture, biography section, important dates, and then impact on the civil rights movement. Remember, I talked yesterday how if you're going to have more information in one section, that's the one it should be, the impact they had on the civil rights movement. And then just please don't forget to copy and paste your sources into your speaker notes. All right, so that was it for, for social studies. So then now let's jump back to language arts, and I want to talk about the optional assignments. So anybody who's tuning in who's not interested or just not doing these, you don't have to watch it, and you can just cut the video off now. But here is the optional assignment for today, which is a writing response on chapter 7. There is the section that Squealer states that Snowball was a traitor at the Battle of the Cowshed. And I just gave you some of the back and forth between Squealer and Boxer. And the question is, how is Squealer taking advantage of the other animals during this section, and why do you feel this way? So something that I definitely touched on, 5 minutes ago or whatever it was, talking about that section of the story. So if you need to, you can pause, go back, listen to what I have to say about it. But very clearly, Squealer taking advantage of the other animals in this section. So just asking you how for the assignment for today. All right. And then it looks like, I can't tell if my stream has frozen. On my screen, it's looking like it's frozen. I don't know if it's frozen for you or if my internet connection just stinks. So let me jump over here to see what, well, it looks like it should be recording from that. Okay, no, so it unfroze. So it's probably just my other Chromebook being a pain, and my internet connection not being the best. So I apologize for that, for our quick pause. But then I just want to talk last thing for today about the optional assignment from yesterday, which is the intro sheet for vocab word roots for Unit 11. And here is a filled out copy of the sheet. So you can go ahead, open yours up. I'll actually pause here. And so if you want to go through and fill in the rest of your sheet just as practice, you will be able to do that. For those of you, like I said, who didn't have it all the way filled out before, but were wanting to follow along with Unit 11. I want to say we had maybe about 15 people who did all of the quizzes and things like that. So I really appreciate that. This is all optional work. This is all extra stuff, but things that are meant to help you and are helping your grade. And so I just want you to know that I very much appreciate it, and I hope that you and your folks appreciate it too, taking on this extra work. So first word root, set or cess, means to go. So the three words, I had proceed, which means to go forward or to move ahead, recede, which means to go back from a prior position, and then exceed means to go beyond what is expected, like exceeding expectations. Next word root, doc, means to teach, like a documentary that's a film that's meant to teach about something. Docile means easily taught or ready to accept instruction. And then a doctor is one who teaches. If you're talking about someone with a doctoral degree, in a college professor, usually they are doctor of something. Then we have pend or pens, which means to hang or to weigh. So for example, suspend means to like hang out to dry, or like a suspension bridge, those are cables hanging. The bridge is hanging on cables. A pendulum is a weight that hangs. It's used to tell time. If you think of an old grandfather clock, the thing that swings back and forth, that's a pendulum. And then pending means hanging over or awaiting a decision. So something that is pending, it's kind of overhanging someone or something. Port was our next word root, means to carry. So import means to carry into a country, and export means to carry out of a country. And then finally, I also wrote portable, which means able to be carried. All right, and I'll scroll down because I can see that my head's blocking some of these on the screen. Then we have tip or type, which means to print. So a typewriter is a machine that prints words. Some of your parents might have old typewriters around the house. Typography is the style of printed matter, how it's laid out, how it's formatted. And then the third word I came up with was genotype. It's a science term that is another way of saying a genetic imprint, or what a person's genes have printed out in terms of different traits, characteristics. There's genotype and phenotype. Those are two of the words that come from this word root. All right, two more. We had ver, which means true. So verify means to make sure that something is true. Veracious means speaking the truth. And then very is another way of saying truly or exceptionally. So if something is very good, it is truly good, exceptionally good. And then finally, we had vid or viz, which means to see. So the word visual means relating to sight. Supervise is a way of saying to oversee. If you're a supervisor, you're seeing over other people. It's another way of saying like being a boss. And then envision is a way of saying to see in one's mind. You envision seeing something. It means you're seeing it in your own head. All right, so those are our 7 word roots for Unit 11. You can go ahead, fill in the rest of your sheet. I would obviously suggest looking these over. And then over the next 2 weeks, we will have review activities, quizzes, Kahoot. Again, all practice activities, chance to bump up your grade and learn some more Greek and Latin word roots. So hopefully we'll have a good number of people who take advantage of that. But like I said, this is 100% optional. So that's up to you. But yeah, that's all I have for today. So for language arts, fill in Squealer and the dogs on your allegory chart, and then optional written response on chapter 7. And then social studies is your last day to complete your civil rights activist slides. Sorry, this was a little bit of a longer stream, so I appreciate if you've come all the way to the end. But hopefully it was all worthwhile and you found it helpful. So other than that, everyone, please don't hesitate to email me if you have any questions. And I hope that you all have a great rest of your day. Looks like it's going to be another kind of nicer weather day. Maybe supposed to rain a little bit later, but hopefully you'll get some time to go outside and take advantage of the nice weather while we are able to. But until tomorrow, I'll be back again, and I hope everyone has a safe and healthy rest of your day, and I will see you next time.